Sophie, are you in the shot? Probably. Okay. Hi everyone. Everyone equals Lexi. I'm back from my hiatus. I feel like, I don't know how long it's actually been. I think it's probably been like 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks since I've taken a video, but yeah, there's a lot that happened. What was happening to me? Well, first of all, last time in the video that I was filming, I was saying how I applied for a job, and if I didn't know, or if I didn't get it, I wouldn't know what I would do, and I didn't get it. And guess when I found out that I didn't get it? When my apartment was flooding. So, yeah, that was basically the start of this whole long break. My apartment flooded, and then we had to stay at my fiance's parents' house for a week. And they redid the floors and everything, so now it's nicer, but that was just like a whole ordeal. And I also found out that I didn't get that job, so I'm supposed to hear back from a place today and we'll see. I washed my hair and I'm waiting for it to dry and trying to get volume on the top, so I will be wearing this throughout the video. Also, I got sick. I think it was norovirus or food poisoning, so that was terrible. And 2 weekends I went skiing, and then a bunch of my friends from an internship I did like 4 years ago came out, so I haven't just been doing bad things. There's also been good things happening that have been keeping me from filming. But anyways, I'm back, and I was gonna do reading 1-star reviews of books that I've read, both books that I like so I can like combat them or see it from a different point of view, or books that I also hated so I can bond with them. I wanted to do my reactions like as realistic and in the moment as possible, so I haven't actually really found any reviews for these, so I'm just going to be scrolling on my phone. But let's see, we're doing Goodreads. I know I hate that it's owned by Amazon, but that's where most people write their reviews, so. Let's start with my favorite book, Words of Radiance. I don't know how you can leave a 1-star review for this. Okay, the amount of 1 stars are like so small. Maybe I'll do Way of Kings instead, because I feel like if you gave Way of Kings 1 star, then like you wouldn't keep reading on. Okay. Madeline says, from July 15th, 2016. If you have to read The Way of Kings, which you shouldn't do, but if you have to because your dad gave it to you and he's your dad, I recommend you do so while a little bit drunk. It makes this book a lot more fun. For example, when passages like this occurred. She stared eastward, her expression horrified, eyes wide and sorrowful. It was the face of a child watching a brutal murder that stole her innocence. Well, I'd much rather read that sort of thing while slightly drunk. I don't understand her issue with that sentence. Okay. Actually, although The Way of Kings is quite terrible, it is never difficult to read. Part of that is because Sanderson repeats every piece of information at least 3 times and rehashes characterization infinitely, so you're unlikely to lose track of where you are because things have gone too quickly or subtly. It's like the whole thing was written as an audiobook or something, with the assumption that no one would pause it during bathroom breaks, so it goes quickly. I probably could have read it in a day or 2 if I'd cared enough about what happened to put aside a weekend for the book. My phone is glitching. This is so long. Relatedly, The Way of Kings isn't entirely unsalvageable either. Part of the reason it's so bad, perhaps the primary reason, is because Sanderson doesn't seem to know what is important. The world building seems to get a lot of praise and review, but reading the book, it seems more like he'd rather be a video or computer game writer or designer than a novel writer. There's a distinct wow feel to this book, and the world has a lot of gimmicks, and the plot has really no forward momentum. It's like everyone is bouncing around until they reach the next level. I'm just saying, when you find yourself writing about anticipation spren, that is a red flag. So if you cut out the prelude and the prologue, which are mostly establishing the setting, and it's not, frankly, such an opaque setting that a reasonably intelligent person couldn't figure it out as they went along. And anyway, there's something to be said for not telling your readers more than you tell your characters. The book already has a more compelling opening. Cut even more, follow the Mamet rule and get rid of the first 20 minutes / 150 pages, so that we start with Kaladin being glum in a slave cart and we're great. But even more egregious than the info dumping, stuff I don't need to know, currency rates in anything but the broadest outline, what tertiary characters are wearing, and so on, are the endless flashbacks. I wish we could eliminate flashbacks from literature, I really do. But even if we can't do that, I wish we could limit Brandon Sanderson to a couple. Again, this isn't so opaque or intricate a book that I can't pick up clues about formative experiences when they're referenced 20 times a chapter, okay? But also, that stuff doesn't matter. It really, really doesn't. The book would be both better and shorter without those flashbacks. Like, of course, it's going to be 10 books. Fully half of each book is going to be extraneous to the plot. The other big problem, as you might have guessed, is that Sanderson thinks his readers are very stupid. For example, if something important just happened, and most of the book has been devoted to its occurrence, I don't need something just changed, Moas whispered, hands up. Something important. Yeah, we'd already got there. It's terrible writing anyway, just from an aesthetic perspective. Likewise, oh my god, my phone. Likewise, I don't need every bit of characterization spelled out for me. For one, a bit of ambiguity is valuable, otherwise it looks like a casting call or stage directions. For another, character is expressed by dialogue and action, and if a writer is a good hand in at least one of those, then passages like Navani was always at her most genuine when playing with new Fabrials. It was one of the few times when one got to see her without any pretense. This wasn't Navani the king's mother or Navani the political schemer. This was Navani the excited engineer, are entirely unnecessary. Good things about this book. The food sounds delicious. The male-female divide is kind of interesting. Kind of. It passes the Bechdel test. Other bad things. The battle and fight scenes were super boring and awkwardly written, and there are a lot of them. What? That was so long. So I might cut out some parts of it. But the fact that at the end they say that the battle and fight scenes were super boring and awkwardly written, hello? That's not true. The battle and fight scenes are the best parts, and they're not awkwardly written. I always feel like I can see into the mind of, like, everyone that's involved in the fight, and I feel like Brandon always does a good job of, like, showing both sides, and, like, both getting into the minds of everyone and, like, seeing from their individual perspectives, and then also having, like, an overarching perspective where you can kind of, like, feels like I'm in a drone almost. What else did she say? I feel like it's so confusing because she's like, I could read this in, like, 1 or 2 days. But then she's like, oh, this book is so long. But I'm like, if you can read, like, an 1,100-page book in that amount of time, then, like, I feel like you're reading it pretty fast and it's engaging you. So that was confusing to me. Also, the parts about, like, how he's, like, doing too much world building, and, like, she doesn't need to know about the currency of blah blah blah. Like, Sophie's just knocking everything down. I feel like you do need to know, though, because all these little things, like, come up so much later, and then when you, like, make the connection, it makes it so much better. And then she also is saying that he thinks, like, his readers are dumb, but, like, that is an example of how he doesn't, because I feel like she's just not making the connections, because some of the world building and stuff that he does connects to stuff later, and it's never really, like, explained. You just have to make that connection or you don't. And so he's not explaining everything. Also, like, her saying that, like, using characters, dialogue and stuff like that to, like, emphasize when something big has changed in the book or whatever, like how she was saying that Moash was like, something changed, something important wasn't necessary. I feel like he's not using the characters to, like, emphasize to the reader something. He's using the moment of the change to build characterization. So, like, Moash saying that wasn't, like, informing the readers of the change. It was, like, showing how that change has impacted Moash and, like, what his opinion of it was, if that makes sense. Also, I don't know, for this being a 1-star review, I feel like in my opinion, 1-star review was like, I hated like everything about this book. But then she didn't hate everything about this book, so also one thing she says is that there really is no forward momentum, which I feel like I can see where that is coming from because you're jumping around to so many characters that the time is moving very slowly, and like the forward momentum of each character takes so long to get back to because you'll like read about them for a bit and then skip to someone else. So I do understand that, but for me that kind of worked because I liked diving so deep into the world like that and like getting into all the characters and seeing it slowly over time. So, okay. Madeline, I don't agree with you. Your review is confusing to me. Moving on. Let's do one that I like just finished. We'll do Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is a romance that's like Western. Well, it's in Wyoming, so it's like ranchy, Western. They're on Rebel Blue Ranch, and it's like the little sister who, she's like 24 now, and she comes back after having a bad riding accident because she's like a professional barrel rider, and then she ends up falling in love with her brother's best friend. So forbidden. Oh my god. I gave this 2 stars. Okay, Mariana 2 months ago said, not to be dramatic, but this book made me want to haul myself off a cliff. Yeah, like, I don't know how to explain. I mean, my review kind of explains this, but like, this book is so stereotypical and like basic, and the writing isn't very good. I was entertained by it, but that's such a low bar. Like, I can be entertained by any romance story and a happy ending, but yeah, I can see that. Like, I also just needed a palate cleanser, so this worked for that. But if I just like went in to read this book as like a palate cleanser is like, does this work for me in this moment? Is this what I needed? But if I like wasn't looking for a palate cleanser and was looking for like the next novel I want to read, this would not have worked. This one says, Isabel, 1 year ago. From this book, I've learned that PTSD, panic attacks, and ADHD are no match for sexy cowboys. Never mind therapy. Apparently, all you need is a good dickin'. Yeah. Like, at the beginning, the author writes this little blurb, like an author's note, that's like, I have ADHD and I wanted to see that represented in this book, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the ADHD component like didn't really play a role in the plot or anything, so it was just kind of there to be there, and it was like it would be there like representation, and then it'd kind of be forgotten, and you just like move on, and all of a sudden be like, don't forget this character has ADHD. But it's like, if like, I guess that's representation, but I feel like if you're gonna put that in there because it's like very meaningful to you, then it should actually play a role in the plot and be more memorable, because I would like forget about it and then all of a sudden it'd come back up and it'd be like, wait, I need to check off my list that I like represented this. So yeah, I agree with that part of this review. Also, yeah, so basically the reason why the main girl comes back to her family's ranch in Wyoming is she's like a professional barrel rider. And then she gets into a bad accident where she gets thrown off the horse and like hits the fence and gets hurt and stuff. And her mom died by like getting bucked off a horse and hitting her head on a rock just right. So basically she like almost had the same experience as her mom, which killed her mom. And she's been like riding her whole life, and then all of a sudden she can't ride at all anymore, and she's like terrified to get in a horse, and she has panic attacks whenever she thinks about it. So like, it's really bad, and for good reason too. Like, she basically changes her whole career path because of it, moves out of where she's been living for like 10 years, breaks up with her ex, or her boyfriend at the time, then becomes her ex, and like packs up her whole life and just like moves on because of this incident. And then she also won't tell anyone in her family about it. So it's really bad. And then, yeah, just through like the power of love, she's able to overcome it super easily, and then like breaks her record in barrel riding at the end and blah blah blah. Also, now that I think about it, she like never, I don't remember her ever telling her family why she gives up barrel riding and like why she comes back home, because she's afraid to tell them because she like doesn't want to think about it and stuff. And I don't know if she ever tells them. She tells Luke, the sexy cowboy that she's into. So I feel like that's kind of just like an unfinished line of the plot, unless I'm being dumb and it was in there. But the fact that she was like still unable to tell her family this at the end is like, it makes her character development so unfinished, and it's like she still has so many problems. I don't know. Also, yeah, like it would be so traumatic to get hurt the same way that your mom died, and then through her brother's best friend and just like having sex with him and like falling in love, she's able to overcome all this, which I understand, like having someone who you feel like is your equal, who you can talk to, because like some parts of therapy are just like having someone who you feel comfortable talking to about this stuff. But yeah, this was a traumatic enough experience where I feel like she shouldn't have been able to overcome it this much, and like Luke is not a qualified person to just like help her be completely fine with this after like 2 months. So I give this 2 stars, so not that far off of 1 star, so I agree with Isabel. I don't know. Let's do like The Lightning Thief. A classic. Okay. Samadurita posted this review, and then she has like an edit of this review later about her like complaining because so many people have been yelling at her for her negative review. Okay. It says, caution, brutal honesty ahead, read at the expense of having to respect someone else's views. She's so mad up here because people have been telling her to write a best-selling book so she can like back up her points. Okay, what does she say? She says, what a feeble attempt at recreating the Harry Potter magic. Aside from being highly unoriginal and unimaginative, the book grates on your nerves due to the frequency of Percy's lame attempts at sounding witty. Seriously, I'm supposed to laugh at his observations on the Bull Man and barnyard animals? Not only did the writer not bother racking his brains to come up with a plot or a proper story, choosing instead to recycle key elements of the Harry Potter series, but he also ignored important aspects of a fantasy novel, one of which is the language. To call the narration just bad will be an understatement. Same can be said about the dialogue and the way the plot progresses. It's one cliched event unfolding after another. The only novel thing about this book is the seamless integration of Greek mythology into a fantasy-based setup. The 1 star is for that. And so I'd like to put a premature end to my review because I just realized the futility of writing one of a book. Why? My phone. Okay. And so I'd like to put a premature end to my review because I just realized the futility of writing one of a book I hated. And then she has so many shelves. It says that she shelved it as abandoned without ado. And she also shelved it as yawn-inducing and should not have been published. Okay. Like, when I reread Percy Jackson, like, last year, the year before, and I gave it 3 stars, but I feel like it's written for like YA, like pretty young, like 5th grade-ish, I would say, readers in mind. So it's like my review isn't for the target audience as much. And so she is definitely older. And she keeps hyping up Harry Potter, but like she's saying how this recycles things from Harry Potter and it's just like copying that. But Harry Potter, like J.K. Rowling copied so many, like so much of fantasy is copying things from the past. It's like Lord of the Rings started this whole genre, and it's like that some aspects of that are in this book, and then some aspects of this that are in this book, and then like the next person takes Lord of the Rings and then other aspects from a different book. So it's like so much of fantasy is repeated. I don't know why Harry Potter is her like all hail, because Harry Potter also copies. But I feel like good fantasy is like using, I mean, not, this is like not an overarching statement, but I feel like in a lot of good fantasy it's like using tropes and like ideas that have already been made but kind of twisting them on their head, or just using them in a way that like really works with your characterization and like changing the setting and stuff so that it's like new in that way, you know? Like I don't hate that fantasy is, I hate using the word tropes, but I don't hate that fantasy can be very like structured and a lot of the books have the same kind of like plots and stuff because it works. Like I like that. That's part of the reason why I like fantasy. So I feel like, I don't know, like you can't just knock the Lightning Thief for doing that. That's like the whole genre of fantasy is what I'm trying to say. Also, she's hating on Percy's lame attempts at sounding witty. Okay. Isn't he like 11 in this? Like, I feel like any 11-year-old who's trying to sound witty they're kind of going to be lame attempts, but that's kind of like the funny part of it. Okay. Also, oh yeah, she says how the plot is like one cliched event unfolding after another. Is Harry Potter not the same thing? I don't understand. Okay. And she's saying that the dialogue is like bad. They're again like it's like they're 11-yearolds talking to each other. It's not like they're gonna have like some super deep conversations. And then like some people down here are agreeing with it where it's like you can argue that it's just a children's books, but children are smarter than this. They can comprehend better written stories than this. Like, yeah, maybe they could comprehend better stories than this, but I feel like the dialogue is representing that age group. So, like, even if they could comprehend, like, more in-depth dialogue or, like, bigger words or whatever, in real life, they wouldn't talk like that. So, like, they want to be represented in the book how they would be in this situation, if that makes sense. So, this review is dumb. Moving on. Let's do another book that I liked a lot. I'll do The Bone Ships, which is another one of my favorite books. This review, here's one. This one I saw and I like screenshotted. It's really long. Okay, I'll read the first part of it. I'm 15% in and I'm both bored and annoyed. Look, nowadays every fantasy writer and reader seems to be obsessed with world building and making it as over the top as possible. Of course, some world building is necessary, but adding ridiculous words every 2 sentences is not good world building. It is especially useless and stupid if you're inventing new words to name something normal just to fake that your world is so rich. Example, in this thing, every single fucking position people can have on a ship is given a new stupid name. A damn doctor is called a hag's hand. Why? What does it add? Nothing. A hat is called a hat, but a doctor needs some fancy new name for no reason. We're less than 100 pages in, we don't know much about the characters or what's going on or why. but we get told the fancy fantasy names of the days of the week, which again adds nothing. Coming up with a name for a palm tree, a new name for a palm tree, is not good fantasy writing. Work on the things that are necessary for the story to glide to capture people instead of reinventing. I can see where they're coming from actually, because in the beginning of this book there are like so many new words. However, I feel like it works because they're saying that they're doing it just to make the world building feel rich, but like the reason why I like reading fantasy is because it takes me, like it transports me to a new place and like somewhere else, like other cultures and stuff, other languages, like they have different words for things. And so like it wouldn't make sense to be like on this world that's like so revolved around this battle between the like different islands, and like their world is so revolved around ships and everything like that. Like it wouldn't make sense for them to just have the same words as us. Also, how they're saying, like, the doctor can't just be called, like, why can't the doctor just be called a doctor? Like, ugh, it doesn't make sense. But, like, even in our world here, ships and stuff have so, like, their own language, like, starboard and port and blah, 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 like, instead of right and left side and stuff, like, port and stern, front and back. So, like, already in this world, there's so many different words for on ships. So I feel like it makes sense that in this world where like their whole way of life is centered around ships, that they would have different words for everything. And then also, I feel like the world building, I don't know, that's like one of my favorite parts of this book, is because it's like so unique, and because the author does such a good job of like showing and not telling, that I found it really fun. At first you're like, I don't know what this word is, but then you just keep reading and don't get hung up on it, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, I know like this whole religion and this whole culture. So like the showing and not telling is so good, and it's fun to discover that, and they do it in a way where it's just like, oh my god, now I'm a part of this culture kind of thing. So I don't agree with that, Derpa. This part says, another thing that is ridiculous, that one more book tries to make us believe that it's totes my goats natural and indeed logical to pretend that women can be like 50% of some fighting force, and biological and physical gender differences ain't shit. Yes, some women can keep up with men, very few, they are the exception. 99% of us can't. There's no shame in it, and it's not helping anyone to pretend that I could absolutely outlift and outfight and out physical labor men. Okay. I don't even know if I want to address that. Need to take a moment. Okay, Derpa. Number 1. This is a fantasy book. I feel like you're like getting lost in the fact that it's a fantasy book. So it doesn't have to be accurate to our society and world. So maybe in this world, women and men are more physically equal, if that makes you feel better. Think of it from that perspective. This is a very matriarchal society. Like the way that people gain power is basically being able to give birth to a lot of kids. Like their high up leader has had 13 children, and that's why she's the leader, is because she's that strong. Like, okay, now I'm getting mad. But like the whole religion and hierarchy and political like machinations of this book are based on women who can give birth to a bunch of children, which is like one of the hardest things that you can do. And like men don't do that in our world, that you're like very, oh my god. What I'm trying to say is that in this world, your power and stuff comes from being a woman who is strong enough to give birth to a lot of kids. And men can't even do that. Like, so this whole world is built on women being strong in ways that are different from men. And then, also, like, it's talking about how there are very few women that can keep up with men, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't outlift and outfight. It's so unrealistic. But also, so much of this is, like, they're not necessarily outlifting and outfighting, but they're, like, outmaneuvering and, like, being more cunning and being smarter. And, like, so much of this book is, like, she's a good leader because of her brain and, like, her way that she can read people and her way that she can understand and empathize with people. Like, it's not just because she's strong. So if you need to look past that, like, there are so many other reasons. Also, I hate that they say it's totes magotes, natural and indeed logical to pretend that women can be like 50% of some fighting force. Like, okay, we're just gonna move on from this review because it's making me mad. Okay, let's go. Oh, I'll do a nonfiction book because I feel like the reviews for these ones can be funny. Okay, this one is for Into Thin Air, which is like the personal account of the Mount Everest disaster. It says, the author states that climbing Everest can be a long and tedious task. Sorry, John, but so is reading this book. Also, if you look, I mean, I know that this, like, even for me, this isn't accurate, but then if you look right below that, it says, read from June 8th to June 9th. So it just makes it seem like he read it in one day, even though it was a long and tedious task. This is Steve in 2017, by the way. I feel like, I mean, I can't, like, discount this review because maybe it was for him. But, and, like, some nonfiction books can just be long and tedious. And I can see why this one would be long and tedious because so much of the beginning is explaining, like, the whole setting of Everest and, like, the history behind some of the stuff there. And then you're also learning about, like, all the people on the expedition and all the other teams who are out there at the same time. So I feel like if you're just not into that, then, like, it is going to be long and tedious. So I can't discount you, Steve, and I like your review. It's funny. Okay. Maybe I'll do The Secret History because that one's so popular. There has to be so many reviews. When I read this, I gave it like 3.75 stars. I feel like now I'd probably give it like 3 stars. Okay, here's one. Jeez, this is long. I'll read some of it. This is from 2023. Their name is Nostalgia Braced. Thank God it's over. I don't think I can surpass the review Nick wrote earlier tonight, but here goes. Do I have to read the review that Nick wrote? Okay, first they start off with the good. This book is well written, at least in a certain contextless sense. There are many sentences in it, occasionally even paragraphs, that if taken by themselves look like they might have been from a book worth reading. At least 2 of the central characters, I'm thinking of Bunny and Henry, are vividly portrayed in interesting figures. Unfortunately, one of them dies halfway through. That's not a spoiler as it's revealed in the prologue and the other largely fades from view in the second half. There's at least a 200-page stretch in which the book is an exciting page-turner. Unfortunately, it's over 500 pages long. Okay, that was their good. Let's go into the bad. Besides the 2 characters mentioned above, the others are frustratingly thin. Frances has no personality traits besides being stereotypically gay. Camilla has no personality traits besides being a generic female love interest in a completely unappealing subplot that seems to have been included on the Hollywood logic that no story is complete without the protagonist falling in love, and thus having a putatively alluring reticence and mystique. I'm not sure Charles has any discernible personality traits at all. These 3 characters are rarely absent. At least one of them appears in virtually every scene. And given that, it's almost impressive how poorly developed they are. Okay. I, get what they're saying about this part being bad, but I feel like them being very stereotypical and therefore seeming undeveloped is, part of the plot, because in my perspective, part of what she was trying to say is that, the characters of the book were becoming so intertwined with the characters that they were playing in, when they were acting, that it was kind of becoming intermixed and, hard to distinguish them from their roles and their actual personalities. And so, because Camilla would always play, the stereotypical Hollywood love interest, female, love interest, that's what she kind of is like in real life, if that makes sense. So, I feel like that was part of the plot. Okay. I read through more of what they wrote in this section, and, I don't agree or disagree with it because I don't remember fully. I read this book a while ago, so we're going to move on from Nostalgia Brace review. But I'm going to address or talk more about, what they said in the earlier part where they were talking about what was good in this book. They said how the book is well written, but, in a contextless sense, where if you, take a paragraph by itself, it's really good, but in the context of the book, it, doesn't add things to it, I guess, is what they're saying. And I agree with that. There's a certain paragraph in this book where I read it, and I was like, that's one of my, favorite things that I've ever written. There's so much emotion in it and imagery, but there was just, I feel like they also kind of addressed this in their review, but, it seemed, so contradictory of, where Donna Tartt wanted it to be, a literary masterpiece, but then also, a thriller kind of book. And so it just, didn't blend well, is what they're saying, and I kind of agree with that, because, there'd be so much beautiful writing, but then it would make the book feel really slow, and we'd be going into depth about, every blade of grass. But then a thriller, I feel like, is supposed to, move really quickly, and so I feel like it kind of, had this disconnect, where it'd be, beautiful writing, but then it was is this really, what the tone of the book should be for what's happening right now? And maybe that's, was her point, but for me, it did not work. Okay, let's go into Heartless Hunter, because this is, a romantasy, and I did like this book, but I feel like it can be controversial. I kind of want to reread it because the rest of the series, I think, is out. This one says, DNF 43%. My little toe has more chemistry with the foot of the bed than whatever these two had. That's such a weird analogy. I feel like they had chemistry. I don't know what to tell you. This one is just a 1-star review and it just says, I'm free, in all caps. Okay, here's one. I feel like the author singled me out, asked everything I hate in a book, and then just made this book but added playing with period blood. Okay, just to list some of them. Obviously the use of period blood, like you, but okay, plot reasons. Don't do blood magic using self-harm cuts because it makes you a target for witch hunts. Still you. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm iffy on this topic. Period blood is a normal thing, but then also it is kind of gross at the same time. Okay, they say, the fact that Broseph Gideon feels the absolute need to have sex with someone to prove that she has no scars is weird. Weirder and creepy is that random-ass chick Harrow keeps pushing for him to have sex with her. I know it's for plot and romance reasons, but how fucking creepy. Peer pressuring people into doing the deed is you. Yeah. It was weird, how Harrow kept being this is the only way we can figure it out. It was very we're gonna move the plot forward by doing this. And we're gonna get them to sleep together, and this is how. Kind of thing. And I I got why they needed to do it, but it didn't make it more comfortable, if that makes sense. So I can see where they're coming from right there. They're writing about how they hated how large the font was. Like, okay. A bro literally dies and all people can say is oopsies and they leave it at that. Like, no one blames anyone for this outright murder. Not even a why the fuck did you do that? Just she wasn't paying attention. Christ. I have no recollection of what they're talking about, but I don't doubt it. I feel like this is one of those fantasy books where, like, there will be stuff done or, like, people die or something like that, and, like, it's part of the plot moving along, but then if you, like, take a step back and, like, look at it from the perspective of, like, the public or, like, the common people in this story, it'd be like, why is no one addressing this kind of thing? So, yeah, that probably happened. I don't doubt it, but I still like this book. It is entertaining. This video, I don't know how long it's probably been like an hour now. Okay, I have one that I really want to read a negative review about because I have words about it. We are doing The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I gave this book 2 stars, but I don't know. The more that I think about it, the more that I hate it. Okay, this person wrote like a novel. And they also, on publishing day, she said publishing day is here with the like annoyed emoji. Okay, they said, what I liked. The cover is great. Kept me guessing for 50 pages. What I didn't like. Take a shot every time the word murder is mentioned. 101 times. Kit is stupid. 98 mentions of the word terrace. That ending is too much. Yes, it's the ending of this book. Up until the ending, I was like, 4 stars, we're chilling. And then the ending, it ruins it in a way that's like so unexpectedly grand that like it lowered my review by like 2.5 stars. Basically, I'm going to tell you what happens at the end because it's so dumb. So basically, or they just... Okay, I'm just going to tell you like kind of something that happens at the end because it's important to this and you need to know so I can rant about it. But basically, the whole time, like, one of the characters in this book is like bedridden, can't walk, blah blah blah, has been for like 50 years, like since she was a youth, basically. And then you find out that this whole time she could walk. And there's a quote in this review that says, "For a restless girl like me who lost every time my father forced us to play the game in which he locked us in our rooms, I shockingly had no trouble spending most of my time in bed. Very quickly, I learned how to lay very still, sometimes for hours, while my mind roamed the world, going wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted." So, like, she basically chose to act like she can't walk for, like, 50 years. It says, so stupid. Imagine pissing and shitting yourself for over 50 years just to spite your sister. The other reason is that in case her son found her, she'd be there. Dude, that's how she'd want him to find her, living life like she was paralyzed, and then what was her game plan? She just get up and tell everyone she was joking? What would her son think of her then? Yes, like, it's so dumb. Like, she actually spent more than half of her life acting like she was incapable of, like, moving herself, cleaning herself, getting up to go to the bathroom. And the reason is literally that, like, just to spite her sister. She's like, I got really good at just laying there and I could, like, go away in my brain and imagine myself in a different world. Huh? No. Also, it says, how did caregivers not notice that Virginia had legs that were toned from walking? Were her feet never dirty from the ground and walking? She just walked around in the dark with no lights? Yeah. Like, the difference, even if you don't walk very often, the difference between not being able to walk and having the capability to walk but not walking too often is like gonna be drastic on your legs. Like there's no way that you wouldn't notice that. And they're talking about how they're living in this like old manor that's literally falling into the sea. Like it falls into the sea at the end. And so it's like dusty and creaky, like there's no way that her feet would never be dirty. And because the caregivers are the ones who have to clean her because she acts like she can't clean herself, they would notice that. And so the end, that's like 1 out of like 15 things that happens at the end that's not believable or just stupid. So I agree completely with this person. They go on and on, which is how I feel like in my brain I could do for this book. I read it with Abby and we were both like, what do you think of that ending? And then thankfully we had the same thoughts so we could just rant about it together, but yeah. Okay, I will do one more, I think, because this is going to take me a while to edit. So let's do the goal. This book I give 2 stars because all of a sudden the main girl gets pregnant and I was like, that's it for me. But then I wanted to finish it because I wanted to read the train wreck that it is becoming. This person just says this book was boring. Sabrina is quite possibly the most annoying main character I've read in quite some time. She is completely unable to think like a rational, normal human being when it comes to being in a romantic relationship. But yet she is supposed to be this super smart girl who gets into Harvard Law. It just does not compute. Yeah. Like, the whole thing is like how smart she is and how hard she's working to get into Harvard and blah blah blah. But then she like has a child and she lives with her like drunk stepdad who's like sleeping with her grandma. There's like weird vibes over there. And she like won't get out of that situation even though she has options to, because she's like scared of her feelings for him or whatever. But it's like, you're actually raising your child in a horrible environment, and I thought you were smart, so like you should remove yourself from that situation type thing. And like, I don't know. I feel like saying that is like, that's easier said than done, but like, no, she has so many opportunities to get out of it, and she just like, I don't know, she just does not accept them. Apparently, so many people are fine with pregnancy, so that's just a me thing. But as soon as it was the accidental pregnancy and there's just like so much around that, it was just like, the plot was so predictable. And there was a review in there that was like 2 stars, but the person was saying how like she did not deserve him, which is true because he's trying to help and she just pushes him away for so long. To the point where it's like, man, just like, I know you love her, but she does not respect you in the way that you need to be respected. Okay. Thanks for watching! I also have to do my year wrap so far. I only read 1 book in January, so I didn't do that for January, but I'll do it for January and February. And so, bye! See you in the next video.